Now, a report by the AU's African Progress Panel advocates changing Kenya's national laws to boost transparency, increase the portion of revenues to governments and communities hosting the goldfields. For more on the process involved in negotiating and financing of oil contracts, we're joined by Jeffrey Njenja, who is Regional Director of the Negotiation and Conflict Management Group. Good afternoon to you. A colleague of mine once said, who was involved in the political, social, political, economic axis, that there are two markets that you don't trust. The one is gold, one is oil, and the other is arms. Any country going into an important commodity, a valuable commodity, has to be careful. So what are some of the issues that have to be thought about in negotiating new contracts for oil?
Well, thank you very much for having me. One of the things we need to do as East Africa is really to get prepared as we think about, as we look forward to being large producers for gas and oil. And some of the things which we need to think about very clearly is contracting. We need to be sure that we can do documentation, we can prepare documents that would put everybody at par, that will help everybody to play their rightful place. We think we need to think about financing, because this kind of exploitation of these natural resources call for a lot of funding. And those are some of the things we are now beginning to think about. We are asking the banks to create interest, and indeed they're already creating interest, so that they can somehow get involved in bringing in the money which is needed. We also need to think about the local people. The local people do have their own expectations, and we need to prepare adequately to engage them so that they don't feel like they've been short-charged, even as we get involved in what is anticipated to be a major exploitation of these resources. Those are some of the things we want to do. We want to build capacity, because definitely we've not had enough capacity. And we want our lawyers, we want the government, we want the investors all to be fully prepared, so that we avoid what is called the oil curse. Yeah. Those in Africa who have found these resources end up in trouble, and we want to avoid that. Jeffrey, that really is the purpose for this conference.
Jeffrey, how do you stop vested interests, people with an inside track in government and indeed in the private sector, from hijacking the process and benefiting unfairly?
Well, we think that is the reason why this thing has been a curse in many other countries where these resources were found. Having insiders who are taking unfair advantage, we want to be better prepared than that. And that's the reason for this conference. On the 6th and 7th of June, we want to bring the government, we want to bring the investors, we want to bring the lawyers, the judiciary, everybody together, so that we do not make the same mistakes which have been made by others before us.
Well, that's certainly heartening. Now, you mentioned funding a moment ago, and foreign companies will be required to have a local shareholding of 35%. Does that imply that some substantial funding has to go to those local shareholders? How will the identity and the composition of those local shareholdings be determined?
I think our position as Negotiation and Conflict Management Group is that all these things can be negotiated, and all these things should be negotiated. We must accept that foreign investors come into a market with the hope of making returns, and fair returns for that matter. And local people are there to make profit as well. So whatever may be on the table, as far as we are concerned, ought to be negotiated. People ought to come together and talk and find out the best formula possible that assures that everybody's interests are taken care of. That may have been proposed. We would want to urge the government to accept that it is not cast in stone, that indeed it can be negotiated to find the best position possible.
You've talked about learning the lessons from other places, and in that sense, Kenya is in a particularly good position. A lot of other countries have made mistakes. tax is an issue. Tax too much and you kill the enterprise, tax too little and it's unfair on the country.
Absolutely. And, you know, that is something I think we should understand, not just as Kenya, but as East Africa. That if you tax people unfairly, you effectively kill the goose that lays the golden egg. And we don't want to do that. We would want to urge the taxing authority to approach these with a sober mind and with a willingness to negotiate. I think the global best practice in business is negotiation. And therefore, we would want there to be that willingness of give and take, so that then you don't kill some as perhaps you think you're helping some and end up messing the whole party.